Okay, so who are we? Why are we here? So I am Cluster Schmuck, or Dahlia, and my pronouns are they, them, or she, her. I am the head ref for LRD, and London Roller Derby have decided to set this up because we were going to be doing this in person, and we're expecting, 0 to 10 people, or 1 to 10 would have been like incredible. But then we thought we'd do it online in order to try and give people to help people kind of connect to Derby, whilst for many of us playing roller derby is not a possible thing, and also to try and encourage some people to be an official, whether that be a referee or a non-skating official NSO. We just thought it would be something that would be fun to do online, and I'm so glad that you've all joined us.
Hello, everybody. I'm Themis Killjoy, or just Tem. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a referee based in Glasgow, Scotland. So also if this had been happening in person, I also wouldn't have been there. I am a relatively experienced referee. I've worked sanctioned Division 1 WFTDA gameplay in tournaments in every... I've also TDA recognized instructor. Why am I keep going on and off mute? Thanks, Dahlia. Yeah, I'm also a skating skills coach for players and officials. And I'm fairly active behind the scenes in the officiating pillar stuff of the WFTDA as well.
Yeah, I forgot to say, why in any way I'm qualified to do this. Also, I'm a relatively experienced ref, having done things like Continental Cup. But also, I love NSOing. We'll talk about this a bit. So I jam time and did champs this year and things like that. Yeah, shall we?
Yes, I have to say why we're officials. Are you going to do that as well? I'm an official because I'm passionate about like the uniquely revolutionary culture of roller derby. I really enjoy the mental challenge of it. I think it's unlike anything else that I've ever kind of applied myself to. And I also just like skating really fast. Outside of roller derby, I'm really passionate about game facilitation, play facilitation. I work professionally as a play worker and like role play game master. And I think there are lots of really interesting parallels to be drawn between officiating, refereeing roller derby and facilitating games of all kinds.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a ref because I wanted to start getting involved, and someone asked me to come an NSO. So I started NSOing, and I thought I would like to learn how to skate. I've had chronic back pain for a bit, or I used to, and so thought playing is something I can do, but I really like rules, and I always have. Like when I was younger, I used to be on all those kind of like committees where you'd like discuss constitutions and things like that. So I just thought like it'd be a way to get involved in the community. Our expectations for kind of the next 10 weeks is that we're going to make this as interactive as possible. So going forward, we are going to experiment with kind of breakout rooms so that people can have more kind of one-to-one conversation to talk about kind of scenarios and questions like that. In a moment, we're going to experiment with whether we can use a website called Mentimeter. We're going to make it quite visual so that there will be a derby track hopefully on your screen. But our hope is that everyone is respectful, considerate, and ask questions. We have got 2 people who we've got, and we might end up with more, as kind of moderators or kind of sending us questions. They are Holtz and Owen, who are LRD officials. So they're keeping an eye on the chat, and you can also message them if you would like. If you haven't found the chat box, it'll be at the bottom and it should say chat or participants. And then we also might ask you at points to kind of tell us if you think we're going too fast or too slowly. On that note, I've just remembered that actually we have a lot of people here who English is not their first language, and I will try and slow down. So I apologize about that.
On that note, we will intend for future sessions. So when we send out the link for the next session, we'll send out a transcript of the previous session in English, so that if you are watching them back, because we'll record the sessions, or if you want something for reference, we will have a written out transcript of the sessions available the week following the session that we run. It's also worth saying that while we are both experienced WFTDA officials, we don't represent the WFTDA and or even London Roller Derby. I certainly don't represent London Roller Derby, but we have opinions, we have perspectives. They're generally speaking our own, though we hope that you will share them. And with that being said, this first session is going to be a very basic session in terms of the core principles, but what we're hoping to do is to kind of distill roller derby into its like most empirical forms, and in doing so, hopefully, even if you're a very experienced official, you'll be able to potentially be offered some interesting ways of thinking, or thinking about, considering, or just breaking down some of the basic principles of roller derby in a way that you haven't done before. Because we are just speaking for ourselves, you may completely disagree with some of the things we say. That's great. We'd love to be having those conversations with you. So yeah, hopefully, even though it's going to be quite basic in terms of core understanding in this first week, we hope that there will still be some interesting points of engagement for anyone who is a little bit more experienced. This is, so people have signed up to this course from 31 different countries, which is amazing. And so this is it's a unique opportunity in terms of people coming together from roller derby leagues literally across the entire globe. So in terms of using the chat, in terms of asking us questions, in terms of particularly as the weeks go on, when we start to have more like in-depth discussions. I know some people commented in the freestyle comment section of the Google form, quite a few people sort of asking questions or said they wanted to discuss like how officiating varies from country to country, continent to continent. So given the diversity of people that we have in this space, that's something that we should definitely be able to explore.
Completely. So also just to kind of make everyone aware, and the reason why we really are starting, right at the basics, is because when we've got the form back, it was kind of pretty equal in terms of people who are already an official. So you will know things that we may not, and we'll have views, and that is something we're really excited about. And people who want to be an official but literally know nothing, right? So when we are talking about things from a really basic level, and we will get more advanced, please keep in mind that there are people here who may have never been to a roller derby bout. They may not know the things that you think are really obvious. And actually, we don't want to be making assumptions. So if we say something and you're like, I have no idea what that means, please write a question. Please make sure that we aren't assuming that you know something in particular. And then also we've got a ton of people who are players but have thought that maybe learning the rules would help them with their strategy. And actually some of the questions that we had in the form is players wanting to understand how learning the rules could help them with their strategy. So I think in the next coming weeks, there'll be things that we will cover. So in terms of the schedule, just to kind of let you know a little bit about kind of what you should be expecting week on week. Interestingly, I currently can't see the whole schedule because Zoom is in the way, and now I can. So this is what is happening. What is Derby? When you turn up to a gym hall somewhere in the world, what is going on? And this is going to be the real basics. And then we're going to be talking about how is it happening and where is it happening. So talking about things that you have also you're interested in, like packs. What are they? The engagement zone, those kinds of things. And then as the weeks go on, we're going to be adding in all the different types of penalties and some of the things that aren't always written down. So things like potential positioning that refs may have, and some of the stuff that you kind of learn more by talking to officials and by meeting new people and traveling. And that will be the types of things that we're covering over the next few weeks. So we're going to try something now. Let's see if this works. If you have another device, so maybe your phone, please go to menti.com. And we're going to try and answer some questions. So if we go here, can you still see this? My hope is that Bex, Holtz and Owen will tell me if people can't see this.
You can see it.
Great, perfect. So what my hope is now, my computer doesn't crash, which I think, oh, it's coming up behind it, which is so great, but no one can see. Okay, how do I get rid of, oh, there you go. Present that. Technology, okay, so this is what you are all thinking when you hear referee. So, yeah. Oh, someone put a sad face. Okay. When it gets to about 250, we'll start talking about it. But keep writing things. Okay. So people have said whistles. I've got mine next to me. It was such a joy getting them out of my bag today. Rules, zebra, penalties, knowledge, stripey, amazing, gameplay, authority, inform.
Like really close so I can actually read it.
Peacekeeper. Yeah, Tam and I both having to like really zoom in. Amazing.
Boss. Authority. I love the sad emojis.
Yeah, the sad emojis.
Is this the players in our midst, perhaps?
Yeah. Tem, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so a lot of these things are obviously fairly expected in the sense that rules, zebra, whistle, like they're absolutely things that we would all associate with the concept of a referee. Visually as well, the kind of stripes and the black and white thing. I think some of the ones that are most interesting for me and kind of are a good jumping off point for a discussion is there have been a fair number of mentions of two kind of concepts. We have on one side things like authority, boss, rule enforcer, things like that. And then we have kind of fairness, impartiality, and those things aren't opposite one another. But it is interesting because this concept of authority and enforcement is something that even within the WFTDA rules, those words are used. But in my opinion, the very special thing about roller derby is that officials within roller derby aren't really the authority. The authority is the set of agreements that the skaters have made about how they want to play. So the rules themselves are the authority. And as officials, we have a responsibility to uphold the agreement that the skaters have come together under. And the reason why I say that that's particularly special in the context of roller derby is that unlike most sports, the rule set, the WFTDA rule set that we play under is democratically developed, discussed, voted upon, agreed upon. And so it is very, very much the people who play roller derby are responsible for shaping and deciding how roller derby should look. And the rules are then a set of agreements that have been pulled together from all of these perspectives and from all of this experience. And that's why it's changing all the time as well, because when skaters and it's a very extensive process to try and pull together all this experience, but when skaters all over the world play under the rules and particular things become issues or particular things affect the like overall enjoyment of the game, that's when rules change, things are implemented that allow the game to look more and more like the ideal game that the people who play roller derby want to play. And so that agreement is where the rules comes from. And as officials, we have a responsibility to uphold that agreement impartially. Impartial and fair and all of these things, guidance, responsibility, those principles then come into how we uphold those things, because there are very few sports where the participants on the teams apply the rules themselves. Ultimate Frisbee is one of the sports where that happens. There really aren't very many because it's really hard, and impartiality is really hard if you have a personal stake in the game. So that's why as referees we don't have that stake, so we're in a unique position to be able to serve the skaters in upholding the agreement impartially.
So our next question, thank you for all of those, is what skills do you think a referee needs? And whilst you're answering that, we've had a question that says, WFTDA, what are the initials and what does that mean? So it stands for, and this is like one of those moments where you know the answer and you're worried you're going to get it wrong, the Women's Flat Track Derby Association. We're going to actually talk about the other associations that exist, such as MRDA, Men's Roller Derby Association, and the Junior Roller Derby Association as well. But the WFTDA is the body that the London Roller Derby skates under and has for LRD's entire existence, and the one that Tem and I most officiate for, which is why this is being framed around their rule set. What skills do you think? Knowledge. Skating, yep, if you're a referee, yeah. Fairness, observation. Judgment. Just to say, if you've not used Menti before, the ones that are larger mean that more people have said it. So, and also, I like how someone even for skills has done a sad face. I'm sorry that you've had these experiences. Intelligence, teamwork, yes. Some of them are small. Conviction, yeah. Visual, memory, calmness, impartial, objectivity.
I think it's very interesting that knowledge is kind of the biggest one in the middle there.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me that makes a lot of sense though as well, because I think even for skaters who've skated for a really long time, they don't know all the rules, right? There's a knowledge, it can be, it's challenging, and it's why often if you're at a tournament, there'll be some officials who are really experienced and some officials who aren't as experienced. And it's actually so you get those questions being asked and you get that knowledge sharing, and because actually knowing everything for roller derby can be really challenging.
I think also in terms of what I was just saying about the role of the referee being someone who like is specifically dedicated to upholding the agreement, is that actually if you're playing roller derby, having the kind of mental space and having like the opportunity to commit yourself so fully to the rules in the way that officials kind of have to is a demand that for some people will probably take away from their experience of playing the game. So actually having a position that is dedicated not only to like upholding the rules, but being able to know them thoroughly enough to apply them in all kinds of situations. Because one of the things about the rules and the casebook document, which I absolutely recommend that everybody reads, is that it is very explicit that we cannot possibly write a list of every situation that will come up in a game of roller derby and alongside it put the solution, the judgment, the call that you make, like what happens here. And I think the knowledge that is most important is this kind of empirical basic knowledge. If you look at various kind of referee websites for refereeing in all sports, one of the things that comes up a lot is common sense. And I find the idea of common sense a little bit tricky because I don't know, the words just don't seem quite right to me. But for me, it's the idea that if you know thoroughly the underlying intention of the rules of this agreement that's been made, then you will be able to apply it logically. It's so logical, but you need to be familiar with the logic, with the intention of those rules, so that you can apply them to every situation, regardless of what it is.
Yeah, and I think also what I'm finding interesting here is that skating has been a really big one, but actually in the smaller one, some people have said basic skate skills, and some people have said like advanced footwork. And we will be talking about this kind of the skating skills required, and also giving some exercises that you can do off skates, and if you can do it safely at the moment indoors on skates, or do it when it's actually safer to do it kind of outside. It depends on the country that you're in. I am going to quickly turn on the whiteboard just so that I can clear some annotations that have been made. Thank you everyone for taking part in that. Let me see if I can Can we remove annotations, or I don't know, we'll find out. In the meantime, I will let Tem start talking, but if your screen changes, please ignore and just listen to Tem.
Great. Yeah, so I'm going to just talk a little bit more about what a referee actually is and what their responsibilities are. We've touched on it a lot, but I think there are some key skills, some of the things that came up in that bubble that are absolutely vital. Knowledge, I would agree, as I've spoken about, is really important, but the way that you gain knowledge is applying yourself with curiosity, to learning more about the rules, learning more about the game, and putting a great deal of effort into that process. It's not something that happens passively. If you're interested in being a referee, you need to very actively apply yourself and very actively try and sponge in as much information as possible about the game of roller derby. It's also something that there are physical demands, and that's I think where there's an interesting thing between kind of skating skills, basic skating skills, advanced skating skills, and actually these things do vary from position to position, like how important particular skating skills are, how important particular levels of skating skills are, like vary from position to position. I know, I guess anecdotally, a lot of people start down an officiating pathway. There have been some issues with the WFTDA minimum skills and its accessibility, and a lot of people who kind of start doing the minimum skills requirements of becoming a skater and who maybe can't meet certain requirements, or who are taking longer to meet certain requirements. Leagues often have more lenient policies about participating in scrimmage as an official than participating in scrimmage as a skater. And I don't necessarily agree with that inaccessibility, but I know that there are lots of officials who have come into officiating having had the experience of not being able to meet the minimum skills requirements as a skater. And I think that means that there can be this kind of perception that the skating skills required to be an official are less than the skating skills required to be a skater. I think that is true. Like, you can be a referee with less developed skating skills than it takes to be like a roller derby player at the like very entry level of it. If your skating skills you're not comfortable enough in your skating skills to be a skater. For me, for example, I absolutely am not comfortable with contact. I started officiating because I wasn't sure if I would ever be okay with people kind of being near me on a roller derby track, and I eventually decided that I didn't want that anyway. But I chose to be an official kind of like as a before jumping into a full scrimmage kind of situation. What I will say though is that as you go on and on and on for some of the different referee roles, it is absolutely vital that your skating skills are at least as good as the skaters that you're officiating.
I would really agree with that. Like, my goal for this season was to improve my skating skills, actually, because they're not as good as they could be. And I think sometimes you do create a headspace where you can have worse skating skills, but I think you definitely need different skills in some ways. There's no reason that I should know exactly how to kind of brace on someone, but I think refs do need to have a good level. And I think sometimes we forget to train our officials, right? As soon as they finish their fundamentals or fresh meat course, you kind of forget to offer them development in terms of the drills as well.
Yeah, and that's why, so as we said earlier on, as the weeks go on, I will be filming some simple skate skill development exercises and videos with the intention of you just being able to develop some things. And some of those things will be on skates, as we said, that you might not be able to use until months down the line, when being in an emergency room at a hospital is less of a challenge. But also there'll be lots of things that are kind of off skates, but they're focused on developing balance and coordination and focus, reflexes, which are, so these three skills here, communication, focus, and integrity, are, in my opinion, the three skills that are most fundamental to being a good official. Communication kind of between officials, communication with teams, with skaters, with the announcers, with the audience, if you have to talk on a microphone and explain an official review. The communication, the way you communicate, your kind of serenity, your clarity, and your ability to communicate both clearly and concisely is absolutely imperative as an official. However, you can't communicate anything if you didn't see anything, which is why focus is so important, because you can be an amazing skater, you can be a fantastically skilled communicator, but if you're unable to apply your focus appropriately and dynamically to the game, you will have nothing useful to communicate. And then integrity is something that, going back to this idea of upholding an agreement, and it comes from impartiality, but it's also about more than impartiality. It's about honesty and authenticity, like being true to what you understand, trying not to be swayed by loud calls for different things to be done from skaters or teams, and being honest about what you did or didn't see. I think one of the biggest things that, in my experience as a kind of crew head referee, one of the biggest things that comes up as a feedback point with people wondering why they're not kind of getting staffed again, or is that people kind of can be very afraid to acknowledge when they made a mistake, or acknowledge that, be honest about what they said in the previous jam, be honest about why they made the call they made. And people don't necessarily have the integrity to stand behind the things that they've done, because we're all afraid of like making mistakes. And I would much rather work with an official who messes something up big time and says to me, this is what I did, I thought this was what was going on, I did it because of this, it's actually really wrong, and and we can work with that. Whereas if something happens and I'm confused about it and I ask someone about it and they start justifying it in a way that lacks integrity, it makes it very difficult to trust that person. And in terms of us being officials who are holding the game, upholding that agreement that the skaters have made, like, we need to trust each other, and the skaters need to be able to trust us too. Like, we are serving the game, we are serving the skaters. It's not an antagonistic situation where the officials kind of are authoritarianly kind of shutting down things the skaters do. Like, we are holding the game. And if people don't trust you to hold them safely and kindly and with integrity, then you just will not be an effective official. So, like, whether skaters agree with you or not, one of the most telling factors about how successful you are being as an official is, are the skaters glad that you're there? Like, do they feel like they're being held? Do they trust you, even if they disagree with you? Like, I think for me, some of the experiences that have been most fantastic for me as an official, coming off the end of a game where the bench management staff of the losing team, who were very loud about how we did everything wrong throughout the game, sort of come up to you and say, like, thank you, it was really, like, we felt really held by what you were doing, and even though we didn't agree with it, like, we trust that you were applying things to the best of your ability. And I think trust is so much more important than, like, being always in agreement.
Yeah, and that leads really nicely into the next bit, which is, if the slide changes, is the slide going to change? Yes. Who is roller derby? The reason that I've chosen this photo is because it was one of the only photos I could find that also had some NSOs in it, it had some refs in it, and it also had announcers in it. And I was just trying to find a photo that had as many of the different types of roles that there are when it comes to roller derby. I am sure that we missed some people out of this list, so please do let us know. But actually, to create a game of roller derby, and in a minute we will be talking about, and I will go into kind of what does roller derby really look like. You've got the announcers and potentially broadcasting. You've got the audience. You've got people from the governing bodies there. You've got medics. You've got non-skating officials. You've got photographers. You've got skating officials. You've got the stats crew. You've got the teams and their support folk or staff or whatever you would call them. And you've got so many volunteers, whether those volunteers are part of the league and they're kind of selling the food and drink or the raffles, or they're external people who are just helping a game of roller derby happen. There are so many different individual people involved in a game of roller derby, some of who the audience will probably never notice. They'll have never even thought about, you know, well, who are all those people wearing black and looking mysterious and kind of just about, you know, and all the non-skating officials as well. And there are just so many people involved. So what does a game of roller derby look like? We're going to use something, this is based on a tool by Vienna Roller Derby, but we've actually tried to make it a little bit more accessible. So I hope in the comments tell me if you think this is more accessible than white on black. But this is a roller derby track. Can everyone see it? Is this, Tam, can you see this?
Yeah.
Great. Let's see if it can talk about full screen. Okay, so you've got a track. You know, it looks like a running track. And the basics of roller derby is it's a full contact sport played on roller skates, where you have two teams. At most, you have 5 players from each team on the track. And the goal is the person with the star on their helmet cover, so they'll be wearing a helmet cover, is trying to get through all these people, and then after the first go around, they get points for every person on the opposing team that they pass. So if this jammer gets through again, yeah, all the points, okay? So that's the basic premise of roller derby for people who are like, we have no idea. We will be going over that in more depth, maybe with some videos, who knows. I've also got Playmobil. I don't know if that's fun, so we could like have it to skate away on it. So there's different ways that over the next few weeks we're going to be showing you what it is. But this is the track. These lines here, I don't know if you can see my mouse.
Yeah, we can.
great. These lines are 10 feet markers, because something that we're going to be talking about when it comes to things like the engagement zone, the pack, the lines on the track help a visual cue for both the skaters playing and the refs. So in terms of players, you've got the people who have the helmet covers, and they can score points, and they are called jammers. And then everyone else here, they are blockers, and you've got a role that's for a specific blocker called a pivot, and they have a stripe down their helmet cover. And we'll go into more detail about what that can do later, but basically, if a jammer is really stuck, or for whatever reason, they're like, I've had enough of this now, they can pass their helmet cover. We'll talk about what a legal star pass is. They can pass their helmet cover to the pivot, and once the pivot has put that on, they become the jammer. So that's the kind of basic premise of this. And blockers can't score points unless the pivot has then turned into the jammer. And you will have referees. I'm trying to see if I can show the officials. Yeah, bam, so fun. I haven't used this technology a lot. You'll have the referees standing on either side of the track. You'll have jam refs who are following the jammer, right? We'll go through what their role is, but they are just following the jammer. They are the people who you'll see them doing kind of hand movements to the NSOs who are keeping a track of the points. You'll have the inside track refs. They are on the inside of the track. And you'll have the OPRs. This is the maximum amount of referees that you can have. There are minimum, which I believe is 4. Is that right, Tim?
3.
3, great. But this is the maximum amount that you can have. Are there any questions we've got on this?
Yes, OPR stands for outside pack referee.
Nice.
The IPRs are inside pack referees, and JR is the abbreviation used for jammer referees, and that just refers to the position and responsibility of particular referees.
So then that's the kind of the basic premise of what the game looks like. But then timings of a game. This is me jam reffing, and it's a photo by someone called Anya. Not jam reffing, jam timing. I really love jam timing. It's my favorite of my NSOing roles.
I would like you to jam referee in those dungarees, please.
Do you know what? A friend of mine once turned up to scrim without their leggings, so I gave them my leggings, and then I did ref in my dungarees, but I mostly look like a giant baby. But I do love my dungarees. So yeah, I mean, it has happened, maybe not in a game, but always at a tournament, my dungarees.
Champs.
Oh yeah, champs, that's true. I wore my dungarees at champs. Just for people who don't know, and this will sound like a humble brag, but we really don't want to say anything that's exclusive. So when we talk about champs, the WFTDA champs is a tournament that usually happens around November, and it's where kind of the top teams in the WFTDA league in the world, it's where they compete for a very heavy trophy called the Hydra. So it's kind of the culmination of a lot of the kind of top teams in the world year, their season. But in terms of timings of a game, there are 2 halves, 2 30-minute halves to a roller derby game. And those halves are split up into up to 2 minutes for a jam. And then there are 30 seconds between jams. Previously, when we were speaking about the jammers, there are a few things that jammers can do, one of which is score points. But the other thing is if they get through all of the other blockers on both teams first, you will see a jam ref pointing at them. I don't know how much you can see because I can't see myself, but you'll see them pointing, and they're kind of, you know, they're pointing at that jammer. And what that means is that they are lead jammer. They have earned that kind of privilege in some ways. And what you'll see if they are not lead jammer, and both can be not lead jammer, is you'll see a ref go kind of like that. If you are lead jammer, the thing that you can do, and it is a position that you can also lose, which we will also go into more detail about another time, but if you are lead jammer, the thing that you can do is you can tap repeatedly your hips, and end the jam prematurely. And you might do that for strategic reasons or for whatever reasons a player might do, and we'll talk about that. But that's why it says up to 2 minutes. And the reason that I've said that there are many reasons why games don't either feel like or aren't to these lengths is because there are things called team timeouts, official reviews. And so even though the period clock, the big clock on the screen will say, you know, it started at 30 minutes and it's counting down, it can be stopped, which is why usually you will leave a few hours for a game of roller derby, even though the playing will only be for 60 minutes. We've had a question which is, are jam refs on the inside or outside of the track? Jam refs are on the inside. So there are 2 jam refs. I will go back to that and show that again. There are 2 jam refs here. And these are the IPRs, the inside pack refs. And then here are the OPRs, the outside pack refs. And so what you'll see is a jammer going through, and you'll see them, hopefully quicker than this, following them. And then as soon as they pass the hips of that person, bam, they will be the lead jammer. So if you're a referee and you see a penalty, what should you be doing? The first thing you should do is whistle. And there are generally 2 types of whistle, both in terms of how you wear them and also the style of them. The number 1 whistle that you should be using is the Fox 40 Classic, which looks a bit like this. If you're going to invest in a whistle, you might also find kind of pearl whistles or ones that are, I can't even remember what they're called, but they're basically very loud. Don't buy those. If you practice Sonic Blast, don't do that. It's really bad for your hearing. If you practice whistling enough, you will be very loud with the Fox 40 Classic. I don't really have any feelings about pearl whistles, but all refs should have the same whistle ideally. And you've got the finger whistle, which you will wear on your fingers, and you've got the one that you wear around your neck. And there's different types of whistling. But if you're calling a penalty, it's a short whistle, then you say the colour of the team's shirt, which you already know. So
it's a long whistle.
Is that a long whistle? Yeah, oh, sorry.
It's a single long whistle.
One long whistle, apologies, one long whistle. And then the colour of the team, so it might be red, the number, and you say it each digit. So if someone's number looked like it was 701, you would say 701, and then you do the verbal cue and the hand signal. So it might be blow a whistle and say, red 701, cut. When it comes to doing the verbal cue and the hand whistle, you want to make sure it's really clear and that you feel that you've made good eye contact with the skater, that they know that they've had a penalty, and that also you do it in such a way that you know that the NSOs, the non-skating officials in the middle who are tracking all the penalties, have also seen it. So you often might get feedback that actually your hand signals are a bit unclear, they're a bit in, you want them, you know, really clear so that you can see them. Other whistles that you may hear is a short one from the jam timer to start the jam. 2 short whistles that say lead jammer, so I'll go beep beep. I don't really want to blow the whistle in my flat because it will both worry my neighbours and maybe damage my hearing. 4 rapid, so it's da 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 da, which can begin a time out. But then also 4 rapid, but 3 sets of them, so da 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 da, and the jam. And if you want a hint for that, it's the Doctor Who or Star Wars theme tune, so it's like da 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 da. But some head refs may have feedback on doing that kind of quicker or slower. And then a rolling whistle is the end of the timeout or a period. Just a note, you don't whistle if you're giving someone a warning, so something like a false start. And you also don't whistle if you're giving a penalty between jams. So that is sometimes why you have like a ref kind of skating after you rather than whistling, because you're not meant to whistle. If you are a player and you get a penalty, what do you do?
We've actually had a question just before you jump into what to do when you get a penalty. if you're not sure if the penalty is for you, someone has asked in the chat if you can kind of ask the referee, is that penalty for me? You can absolutely ask an official anything you want at any time. They may or may not be able to respond to you, and if you're grossly offensive, there may be consequences, but generally speaking, like, we're all people, and if you have questions, ask them and we will try and answer them. And so if I issue a penalty and a skater turns to me and says, is that me, I will absolutely always say yes or no. And an official, it's not their job to do that. They don't have to, and if their attention is elsewhere, they will potentially just ignore you. And if you think it might be you, you should leave anyway, because it's not a justification for kind of hanging about and delaying your penalty. And different officials will apply kind of insubordination metrics variously in relation to the particular situation, or we'll discuss our feelings about that in a later week. But yeah, feel free to ask officials if you're not sure about what's going on, or if a penalty call is directed at you.
We've had a few questions around specifically what the refs look for, and we will be going into that in the future weeks, but with only 10 minutes left, we are going to move on. So if you are a player and you get a penalty, what do? You go to the penalty box. You should be made aware of where the penalty box is before it starts, and you leave at the first kind of legal and safe opportunity to do so. Often people will say, well, what angle is leaving when you first do so? Not 90 degrees, that could be dangerous if there are players there. Use your discretion. And if actually what you're doing is really distracting a referee, or you've obviously kind of cut the inside and you're making the distance to the penalty box a lot shorter, you will probably get a penalty for that. But you should leave at the first legal and safe opportunity to do so. If that means coming into the middle, waiting a second until you think things have passed and going out, that's fine, but you do have to go around the outside of the track. You can't come into the middle and kind of cut through to get there quicker. You then sit in the penalty box. There will be NSOs guiding you to the seat that you are meant to be sitting in. At most, you can have 2 players from a team sitting down in the penalty box. But if someone has stood up, then you can have more than 2 players from a team in the box. But there needs to be 1 player at least on the track. You then leave the penalty box, and once again, an NSO will tell you when to leave. According to the rules, you are able to leave early if you feel the NSO for some reason has been distracted. But if you do leave early and you haven't sat the full time, you will get another penalty. And then you need to make sure you enter the track and enter it legally, which means entering it behind all in play skaters. If you kind of cut more than 1 person on your own team, or if you cut in someone on the opposing team, you go in front of them, you will end up getting another kind of penalty for entering illegally. We have, just to attempt to make you aware, we have 8 minutes left.
Yeah, and that's why I think, so I'll do this really quickly and also say that we don't have specific exercises for this week, because it is just a kind of introductory week, and all of the things that have come up, the big concepts, we'll be using the basic principles we've kind of laid out here to apply to the specifics as we jump into them in later weeks. So here, these next things are kind of things for you to think about between now and next week. We talked a lot about what to do when you get a penalty, but what actually is a penalty? So a penalty is, they're issued to participants in the game for illegal actions that have impact on the gameplay. It's important to think of penalties as shifting the advantage. So an advantage was illegally gained. That's the impact on the gameplay. And so to shift that, the team that illegally gained advantage is going to be disadvantaged by having fewer people on the track. It's not a punishment. It's not something that should be kind of like doled out to someone. It's a consequence. And again, it's something that's been agreed upon. Impact. So impact is a really sort of huge, that's the next slide as well. It's a massive kind of concept, and it's something that we will be talking about extensively over the coming weeks. But one of the things that I would like you to maybe be thinking about and bringing back questions about for the next sessions is, like, what's your understanding of impact? Like, do do you have an understanding of what impact is, and how it pertains to applying the rules of roller derby?
So what are penalties though? So there's a few different types of penalties. There's contact penalties, game structure penalties, and unsupporting conduct penalties in general. So you've got target zones. Target zones are the areas of someone's body that you are allowed to target. So as you can see from this diagram from the WFTDA, you can target anywhere on someone's front, up from kind of the thighs upwards and the collarbone down. In terms of the back, you can similarly target anywhere on the back of their arms and kind of the side of their body. People's spines are really important, and you cannot hit someone in their back. And in terms of how you're able to block, and this can get kind of controversial, you are able to block with anywhere from kind of above the elbow up, and then also from the kind of the mid thigh up, and anywhere from the collarbone down. When it comes to this, and when we talk about initiating later, you know, there is a lot about kind of the impact and like what warrants whether you've blocked someone or hit the target zone, and sometimes you have to also remember things like you're not allowed to initiate with the head. So it might feel like someone has hit you in the head, but what the referee has seen is that you initiated. And we'll talk about what that means kind of going forward. We've then got game structure penalties, and they're often about anything to do that kind of changes the structure of the game, whether in terms of timing or actually the positioning. So in terms of positioning, you've got things like illegal positioning, like adopting a position where you can't be blocked. So either going intentionally skating outside the track, not for a penalty. Obviously you can leave if you feel there's a legal reason to leave, or if you've got an injury or anything like that. But if you just skate off the track, you're not allowed to do that for no reason. If you go into a downed position on the track, or if the pack gets destroyed. And at that point, it's to keep the pack together. And therefore, if you destroy the pack, and we'll go into pack definition in a few weeks, that's also a penalty. And then interference is anything that changes the timing of the game. So if you have no jammers, which does happen, or no blockers, which also strangely happens. When these things happen and actually you have to stop the period clock to resolve it, also can lead to a penalty. And then finally, in terms of unsporting conduct, there are some things that just aren't written down. There are some things that are, in terms of people having to be respectful, people listening to the officials and not ignoring them. But unsporting conduct can sometimes be a kind of a bag of penalties in terms of things that the referees will decide that actually that wasn't an acceptable way to participate in a game of roller derby in that way. Tem.
Yeah, so this is going to be a theme going forward, but it's also just a way to remember which penalties fall into kind of which penalty family. Think about why certain actions are illegal. Is the thing illegal because it itself was inherently illegal? So contact penalties to like illegal illegal blocking zones, like doing that thing is illegal. And so that thing is a contact penalty. If it's about where it happened, so this thing wouldn't usually be illegal, but the position that it's being done in makes it illegal. Those are position penalties and so on. So there is a very kind of thorough logic behind the words that are used for penalties. These words don't just come out of nowhere. The words make sense in accordance to why those things are illegal. So why does something go against the rules? Why is that thing something that is giving that team an advantage? This will tell you what kind of penalty it is.
And on that note, we've actually finished with, I think, 30 seconds to go. Tem and I have not been looking through all the comments, but we will be. But Holtz and Owen have been sending us through some questions. So we hope we've covered a lot of it. We will be copying and pasting the comments just to make sure we can cover it in future weeks. A few folks have asked whether you can donate. The course is free. We wanted to make this as accessible as possible when people are already having a very strange time of it at the moment. But if you would like to donate to London Roller Derby and help us when we get back particularly I think in terms of, you know, skaters who have lost jobs and being able to enable them to skate in a very expensive city, then it's paypal.me/London Roller Derby. But actually, if that is not where you would like to be spending your money right now, we've also put the links to food banks near where we train in Tottenham, Southwark and Brent, 3 areas in London who very much need as much support as possible. If you do have any questions, please do let us know. This has crashed many things to do with London Roller Derby. Our email system went completely down. So I do apologise if you have only just received your email with the link, or you're watching this late because you have not yet received it. We should have access to our emails now, but no other emails actually within London Roller Derby right now. So that's fun. Our tech support are loving it. Please email us your questions, message us your questions, and we both really look forward to seeing you all next week. Tam, do you have anything else to say before I end the meeting?
No, just thank you all for being here. I know it's a bit of a huge information dump. As the weeks go on, as we said, we'll be going into things in more detail, but also utilising the kind of breakout room features and trying to do less of the just kind of talk at you thing. But that's useful in some ways. But yeah, please do ask questions. There have been requests for potentially a Facebook group and so on for us to put the links, relevant links to the WFTDA materials, transcripts, and all the resources that we're using. So we'll get something pulled together so that there are places where you can continue the conversations that you've been having in the chat, and also access the resources that we've been flinging at you throughout the course of this video.
Exactly. You should be receiving the email that Tem mentioned at the beginning with all the links and also kind of a link to the video and everything like that. Please let us know if you don't. And also thank you to everyone who has been commenting in the comments and answering people's questions that we haven't got to, and we will raise some of them another time. On that note, I hope everyone is staying safe, not touching your face, and washing your hands and doing all that jazz that many of us currently need to do. And see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.